Yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam! Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by David Rios.
Hello.
And Jose Fuentes cannot be with us this week as he is currently battening out of the hatches and possibly evacuating. So we're hoping that he and his family stay safe as they're currently in the middle of the projected storm path for tomorrow. So, yeah. However, tonight, David and I will hold on the fort as we talk about body horror in comics. And hopefully my slurred speech does not body horror too many times, because I have the thing where I kind of roll my H's into my R's together.
Slurring your speeches today, huh?
Yeah. But it's like I haven't noticed like speech defect, but only in a few words, and horror is one of them, because it just kind of turns into, eventually I turn into like doing the Wilford Brimley, just go horror.
There you go.
Yeah. But before we get into that and the start of our Halloween topics, David, what have you been reading, watching, playing, catching up on this week?
Well, actually, before I go into that, I just wanted to say, kind of reach out to everybody that's weathering the storm, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say to, our Grand Floridians and everyone along the East Coast, just be careful, stay safe, stay dry, and it'll pass. Luckily, it's kind of downgraded a little bit, and I know it's the latest reports. It's kind of shifting around, so hopefully it'll kind of limit a little bit. But I know a lot of people on our our Silverline family are in the area, and a lot of our viewers are as well, and friends and family. So just wanted to do a shout out and just you have our thoughts and our our hopes and prayers that everything goes well. So just wanted to do that. So as far as things, not a whole lot. Been when I have had some time, I've been kind of more focusing on the Rings of Power second season. So
Yes.
definitely kind of getting into that. And now that it's all up there and all the episodes are there, so kind of going through that. Reading stuff, just very little of the Krakoa stuff, and just some of the current books. Speaking about current books, I didn't make it out to my comic shop last week, but I did get out this week, so I got my K-List number 4.
Nice.
That ordered through the shops. So yeah, there's the last issue in the series, and I know we're halfway through the next series, so excited to see where that goes.
Nice.
Let's see. As far as nothing game wise, with all of the deals that are going on, the Walmart versus Amazon, and surprisingly, Target had some good deals too. I picked up the Super Mario Wonder for the Switch.
Oh yeah.
I'm waiting for that to come in. That had a pretty good sale discount for a fairly new game, so check it out when it comes in. That's basically it.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm also on Rings of Power. I just finished episode 7, so I got one more episode to go.
Yeah, you're farther than I am. I'm on, I think, episode 3 or 4.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's the classic hat. Yeah. I think, so far, episode 7 is my favorite episode of the season. It's what was that weird thing where it's like if you say The Two Towers is a great movie, right? Because it requires so much of the first section of it to actually pay off what's happening, but it does pay off a lot very well. And it's an interesting way, so I appreciate that. Also watching Bleach 1,000 Year Blood War. So, of course, got to stick true to my anime roots.
Mm-hmm.
Reading wise, not too much interesting. Most of it's continuing work on my lawn book projects, which is the Black Company. We're still working through that trilogy. Did start book 3 of the Dresden Files for Halloween, so now I'm on that as well.
I haven't read any of the books, but I did really enjoy the series when it was out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's very similar vibe. I wish they had given the show more time because it was only like it didn't get a whole lot for it. But the books are, I think, some of the best examples of modern war, right? The way that Harry Dresden narrates and talks. Also, the absurdity of the magic system is something that I aspire to emulate at some scale.
now, when you're following this, are you envisioning the actor who played it in the show, or are you envisioning the way the descriptions are in the series of the character?
That's the thing, is that the book's description is actually fairly close to how I forgot his first name, but Blackthorn, the actor. I've actually looked.
It's Paul Blackthorne, right?
Paul Blackthorn, yeah. It's
Okay.
just in the books, Harry's hair is longer, but yeah.
Okay.
But it's kind of interesting because like so it's like kind of a mixed mesh of both because he like Paul Blackthorn is already such a good casting for it, and it's just kind of it's right there.
Yeah, Paul. I think he played that very well, and I also enjoyed his work as the father of the Lances
Yes,
on on the
an
Arrow
yeah.
show and stuff like that. So I think he's a pretty good actor, and I think he pulled off a very likable character,
Yeah,
which I would imagine is pretty close to what the books are portraying. So
yeah, it's very good.
cool.
Playing wise, playing through Shattered Space, the expansion for Starfield that just came out. Enjoying that. Kind of took my time with it, so I know some people beat it very quickly, but if you actually like do side content, it definitely extends the length of the expansion. I know I haven't even found all the other side quests and weird stuff, so that. As well as painting project and playing. Finally got to play some one-page rules, aka Warhammer, but good.
Okay.
We can get them to focus, but with some of
Right.
my Corn Chosen Warriors of Corn, I can't really get that to focus on there, but yeah, we got the idea.
Yeah.
My autofocus is apparently set very far back.
Well,
Yeah.
better than all way up front, and then you're
Right.
usually a blur in the background. So
Yeah, that's what I've been up to.
So
Yeah.
on tonight's topic, also want to do another shout out. Kevin West,
Yes.
DC artist. Yeah, we pretty much work with a lot of the different companies. Also with Malibu Ultraverse line as well. He does like an annual monster posting on his Facebook. And so there's been some really cool monster illustrations that he's done. So if you're interested in that with the theme of the month and all that, go check it out. It's got some cool stuff there. Also saw, I think Scotty Young is also doing some, or a fan page for his is showing some of the like monster things as well. I saw kind of briefly. So
Nice.
it's cool to see a lot of the artists shift over and do the horror themes for October and all that. So pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely taking over my stream feed as well. Okay, so getting into that topic, we're talking about body horror. And in a previous, I think last year's episode, from the same time, we discussed how to identify the different types of horror in comics, as well as the 5 main points of resonance that create like a horror response in your audience. And that's ended up coining the term the inverted Maslow's pyramid. We're doing the pyramid of fears, where you take the idea of like whatever the pyramid of needs are, but just whatever the violation of that is, it will create some sort of negative psychological response in a person that makes them not not vibe with it, which is the goal of the horror comic, is you want people to be disgusted and horrified by it. So with body horror, of course, we are playing with the need for physical safety or the need for health. Sometimes both, usually both. And if people listening or watching at home are not familiar with body horror at all, that is the use of visuals and storytelling to elicit fear through Usually, not to get graphic with it, but like mutilation of a victim's body, violence against a victim's body. Typically seen as like gore scenes. Notable subgenres are gore punk, splatter punk, and slaughterhouse type stuff. If you're so notable movie, even the slaughterhouse genre would be something like Saw. And it can be combined, and usually is best when used with combined with other forms of horror. If it's just body horror, you're going to be leaning into the splatterpunk side of things. Which, if that's your vibe, absolutely go for that. Just know that you are working with a very niche down audience. But one of my favorite franchises is the Alien franchise. Which does science fiction horror mixed with body horror. The whole, chest burster and face hugger type stuff are classic examples of body horror, as well as some of the kills that happen there in the course of the movies. Go see Alien Romulus if you've not had a chance yet. But body horror is used in tandem with other like science fiction and psychological elements of horror. It's not just there by itself. David, what is your experience with body horror? Do you find that you are a fan of horror movies that are a bit more on the graphic side, or not so much?
I'm more of a science fiction horror than a more of a body horror.
Sure.
Some of the I think of some of the some of the early works. Think of some kind of stuff like James Gunn did with some of his like really body horror, and then you think of some of the stuff that why am I blanking on his name? Wow. Weta Workshop did the Lord of the Rings series. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but a lot of the gore stuff that came out of, his early works.
Oh yeah.
It's just, I mean, some of the things that you see a lot of the the B rating stuff that just its goal is to capture as literally as gross of something that you can put out, that it's so extreme that not only is it just gross, but it's like kind of funny in a bit.
Yeah.
But like I said, the ones that I tend to gravitate more towards is the science fiction horror stuff, like you mentioned, alien stuff. That stuff is kind of more my jam than the body horror type stuff.
That's fair. Also, one that's like perhaps leaning more into body horror recently that I enjoyed was last year's Hulu remake of Hellraiser.
The gender swapped one?
The gender swapped one. Which, the amount of like weird kills and like hard zooms on. There's one scene in particular where we got like a hard zoom on a person being degloved. And it's one of the scenes where like it is almost comical the way like the amount of detail put into it and how close it gets in. But The Fly, Dead Rainers, Videodrome, these are all great examples too.
Well, you kind of touched on it a bit there. It's like you've got the blink and you miss it horror stuff. Like if you just even turn around and think of Deadpool and Wolverine, where he strips the Human Torch. That's kind of a blink and you go. But a lot of the classic stuff is like they want to take their time and really show you show you what they're doing, kind of give you a sense of menace where you can kind of feel it in your bones.
Yeah.
You're like sitting there going, oh, I kind of feel like they're stripping the skin off my hands,
Yeah.
just like they're doing it. So you got that takes between, something that's meant to hit you and they move on, versus stuff where they really want to drive the point home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
And Peter Jackson, I don't know why I was blanking on his name, but
yeah. That is kind of the point. Is like you want to sit in that moment of being unsettled, because that again, that is the point of the genre, is to be unsettled. And with film and video, you have to really know your pacing and how long you'll create that effect, and like know like how much is too much or how much is just the right amount to like sit on that moment, like either like the kill or the violation of bodily space or something like that, where you get that desired effect and you push through. So this is kind of a good place now to bridge off into taking this into comics, because one of the reasons why body horror, I think it works especially well in comics if you are a comic creator who wants to dabble in the horror subgenres, is because of the fact that, because it is a visual medium that sits in panels, there is still a control of pacing, how big panels are, how your page flow is organized, but the panel's always there. So whatever like unsettling scene you want to create, it's always going to linger with the reader until they turn the page. And so for whatever effect you want to create in that moment, you have a lot of more, you have more power there rather than, having to cut seconds for time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, because if we were going to film, the producer's going to say like, oh, you need to trim this for time, or, this is beyond budget, whatever. On comics, you're going to be able to sit on whatever scene you want to create. And if it's going to be, and even then the traditional effects of like action comics, where if you have a big splash page, it may actually be a fast page if you don't have a whole lot of dialogue on there, because you just get this one big visual and then they pass on. Whereas when you're dealing with something that is more unsettling, if you have a big splash page, you're probably going to slow down the reader, because there's going to be a lot there that they like are now absorbing or have been shocked by. And then knowing your use of dialogue there to create pacing is going to be very important. So some fun things that come to mind with this is, again, it's use of body horror in addition to a different genre, but this is actually comedy action. But Hack Slash by Tim Seeley is a wonderful book. I highly recommend anyone read it. I believe several of the omnibuses are on Comixology Unlimited. But there are lots of just, great pages, great panels, just sitting on decapitations, sitting on someone getting gored by something. And the fun thing is it goes both ways, because sometimes it's also the girl also just absolutely like bodying a monster. David, have you had any experience dealing with horror comics, like either creating or reading them? Has it been anything that's like come across your radar? Or is that typically something you don't really find that you've read through much of?
As far as working on, very rare. I did have the ability to work on, with the Ultraverse stuff, some of the Rune books, particularly one of the artists that I really love that does, when I think a lot of, like body horror stuff, was Kyle Hotz, Hotz. So I was able to do some of the stuff from one of his books, one of his Rune books, that was a lot of fun. I also think, when I think of a lot of that style and people that tended to do a lot of that gore, body gore stuff. I think of people like Tim Vigil.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of that stuff. I never really got into. I always kind of wanted to, but I never did for whatever reasons. Some of the Vampirella stuff.
Yeah.
There was some other books. There's like an Eternity from the Darkness book that was one of early Jim Balent stuff, where you just get a lot of those like kind of the ones that kind of trick you a bit, where they have the attractive girl that's a vampire, and then you really start to see how how things can shift, and you see a lot of the mutilation. One of the books that I'm interested that's just starting up is Vault Comics has a Lilith book. That I'm kind of interested in to see how that goes. So here and there, a little more experience on that, but stuff that I tend to like to see people, Francisco Martinez, a lot of the stuff he did on the undead DC vampire stuff. Also Kelly Jones stuff. I like a lot of his dark stuff. So from that aspect, so
yeah, it's yeah. I think I'm fairly familiar with the rest of the names you mentioned. I think there's like one or two that set past me, but yeah, I think those are all really good examples of
which ones are not.
Well, the problem is that there are ones that I don't remember now because we've kind of just shotgun through them.
Okay, sorry. I
right.
mentioned Tim Vigil. I mentioned Kyle Hotz. He's been doing a lot of the DC or some of the DC covers lately.
Yeah.
So just trying to think of.
The problem with Vigil and Hot, so I like, even though like we're like indie comic podcast and like an indie comic publisher, like I still read a lot of Marvel and DC, and so whenever they do something that's as horror themed as their editorial staff let them get away with, I usually enjoy it. The kind of similar end of just like taking existing IP and run through the horror blender. It didn't start out this way, but Philadelphia by Image. That's also a fun one. And then the later issues, they ended up like pulling in like Dragon and Spawn.
Yeah. I've seen. I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with it. I've seen the the Savage Dragon on the cover and Spawn and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm familiar with Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia's a fun one. I liked Marvel's Alien run when they had that. Dark Horse had a better Alien run, I thought, though. And kind of was like that. Hack and Slash, I think, would be like if I had to give anyone like recommendation to go read this like October, I'd probably be Hack Slash. Not just because Tim Seeley and I are mutuals.
Okay.
But I have had a little experience writing recently, working on the Silverline horror stuff that, we announced Dracula, which is what I'm working on. We haven't got any big pages or panels out yet, but I tried to inject as much body horror as I could into Dracula because the original book, there's a lot of like violence and dismemberment in the book that I feel like the Universal movie did not do, and because of that, you always kind of get like the idea of like the well refined Dracula and like the the beam of light through the shades on the eye, like that flavor of Dracula, which it's still a great like film. Don't get me wrong, But
Is this what we kind of term it, the cinematic Dracula?
yeah, like the cinematic Dracula, whereas like rereading the book and like getting used to like, oh, like Vlad Dracul is this old Barovian man with a giant mustache who was very unhappy about the time that he can no longer just walk up and just kill people with a sword. Like he's used to being a crusader, a king, right? So this isn't spoilers. The book is 140 years old.
Okay.
Go read Dracula. But the not Harker's girlfriend, but Harker's fiance's roommate gets turned when Dracula first comes over to England, and she's engaged to one of Harker's friends. They have a whole thing about it. And that's how you kind of put together like the Boogie Squad is the people who are all affected by Dracula coming back to England, and there's all these people in the same social circle. But when Helsing, Harker, and all them actually like kill her, the scene is described when she's like laid to rest is like they have like chopped off her head, put it in her arms, stuffed her mouth full of garlic, and there's like just blood pouring out over her white dress. And like this was in none of the movies, and it is a fantastic visual. So I'm like, splash page. This is a splash page.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing where like understanding like these really strong like visuals of like, oh, this is something that is deeply unsettling, or this is something that is like visually striking. This gets its own big thing. And like I said earlier, that kind of does the opposite of what you'll find in some other comics where like splash page may, the idea is that you do give the reader more visual to linger on, right? You want to give them a spectacle to see. But how many times has Marvel done a double splash page on just a helicarrier on a blue backdrop? And you're like, oh, I'm on to the next page already. And so making the most out of visual real estate will allow you to create those like strong lingering moments like you would get in a movie where they sit on the person being degloved by a Xenobite. That was a fun experiment for me. It was like really trying to understand, or not understand, but mentally visualize. Like as a writer, you should always try to visualize your comic as you're writing out the script. But I feel like it becomes a whole other thing when you are dealing with elements of like a visual horror where you need to make it impact in order for it to be effective at all. And the nice thing is also with comics is that there's no VFX budget until your artist tells you to stop writing detailed scenes because they've developed rheumatoid arthritis. So taking time to really punch up a scene as much as you can visually. And this is going to be a moment of collaboration between everyone involved because it's the writer who understands, okay, the pacing demand, like this is going to be impactful scenes. So I'm going to not fill up this page with panels. I'm going to like maybe do a 2-in-1 or something like that. Redo like 2 quarter pages, 1.5 page, stuff like that. And have that half page panel be the kill or the guy getting their arm severed or what have you. Oh shoot. There's also Spawn that's really got body horror. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was essentially all done in sepia. Can't remember the name of the subrun. It's actually just over my other room. I forgot about it after this, so I can remember the name. But I just remember because there's a scene where they do a 2-in-1 where you see a shadow move, it darts down, and then the half page is the guy holding up a stump of an arm as it's squirting blood into the air. But you have to like understand like your pacing so then the artist has room to play and make this grotesque scene. You're going to be communicating with the artist and they're going to say like, okay, I really want to do these things here where like if someone's like a true like splatter fiend, like to the point where like, what we were talking about, like where you're watching a horror movie and like you're laughing or like you're making jokes out of each kill, right? Yeah, each moment, because like you kind of have to get into it to a degree, right? So that's when you end up saying like, I forgot the meme was, but the Nicolas Cage saying right in the eye. You're watching Final Destination. So they're going to come up with a bunch of ideas and ways to punch up visually, and then you're talking to the inker on which lines are important, and then the colorist also saying like, how vibrant do we want this blood splatter? Like, how pink should I make the intestines coming out of the gut, right? Things like that. And you're going to spend a lot of time. Just I feel like more so than some other things, where like in some genres of comic, you'll create the description of the characters, you'll work out some like the ideas for the general vibe, and then you don't really communicate too much outside of that, except for like when changes happen or when someone else has a weird idea. That was definitely the case with like things like what's it called? Wolf Hunter, right? Because it was a spy thing. So like once you have the visual tone set, that was kind of it. And then there's just adapting things as they need to be changed. With Dracula, though, there was like back and forth and like, okay, this scene, like we need to have a certain shade of blood red as the background, or we need to have like what do you want to do for, really emphasizing the nick on this guy's neck or something like that. And taking more time to kind of show someone cutting themselves with a razor as there's that Slavic man just like thirsting behind him. Things like that. So, I find that the communication and creative process there gets really involved, especially if you're wanting to like really make each scene as impactful as possible. And then, you'll imagine like with other comics, you'll find a pace where everyone kind of settles into their vibe after a little bit. But I feel like the conversation just happens a bit longer than with other genres.
Well, you kind of think about, when you're talking about, splash page, multi-pages, when I think about that, and I think about impact of, of splash and double pages, I think of two separate potential uses that can be written in and artistically done for that. The first case scenario is the, for all intents and purposes, kind of the kill money shot where you have the either exploding head or or Pharaoh tearing off of body limbs and all that, the savagery panels and all that stuff. But then I also think about the secondary piece, which is the mood setup, panning into the spires of hell, where your artist can kind of go completely off and show, hundreds of demons, even small little suggestive, as you have this like pyre where all the demons and everything are all stacked, and just to kind of fill your visual void. But then also along those lines, you've also got things for establishing a theme, like you may use your double page spread for showing the fairly detailed entrance to Dracula's castle, where you're throwing mood in, and all that stuff. So the good use of shifting from the solid, 1 to 2 panels per page to the multi-panel page to get all the little detail. And as a writer, that's a big thing for setting your pace and how you can downplay certain elements and put more panels in to focus more on the defined larger panels and stuff like that. So to get your kill shots and all that. So
yeah. Let's see there. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but we've kind of bounced around on a lot of my notes. I haven't actually referred to my notes too much so far.
But you're also right on, the coloring and the mood and all that stuff. If every page is this vibrant blood scene, then it's going to lose a lot of its impact. So a
Yeah.
lot of the setup, a lot of the monotone. Maybe it's the penciler and inker doing a lot of solid blacks to hide things, and then all of a sudden the monster attacks. The vampire, busts through the wall and with a bloodlust and everything, and you're focusing you're focusing a lot of your color onto the deep dark saturated red from maybe he's holding his last kill in his hands and it's dripping down his hands or his legs or whatever. That balance of every aspect, the writing, the pencils, the inks, the colors, even down to the person lettering it. Maybe they're throwing in more of a graphic, um, you know a graphic monster type text, a growling, things like that. It's a lot of going into really shaping the mood of the book and the pace of the book. So
Yeah. I forgot also, I don't know why I don't remember this, but speaking of Tim Seeley, but also the Vampire the Masquerade comics are fantastic for that. But like, talking about like going from like, using muted colors or using like controller colors, it's kind of like, it's very like muted or not quite like monotone, but there's enough there where you can get like a visual difference with your monster. It's almost like the backgrounds are more evocative art, and then you get, the vibrant kill page with like they turn up the brightness and like they spend time on it, giving it room to breathe. Kind of like you're saying, there were you almost have to, just as much as you're using like your panel length to control the pace and the tone. You can use your colors to balance between like detail in the moments where you need to be detailed to make it impactful, or then abstracting it and like having more abstracted moments or color schemes to let the mood kind of like flow or rise kind of throughout the rest of the book.
well, you have that, plus you have you've had a lot of cases where you're telling something that follows along two separate parts of a story, and ultimately maybe example is you have a frat house, and a group of friends in the frat house, and ultimately they're going to end up in this horror destination, whether it's cave, whether it's a back alley or something like that. And on the aspect of that, you could be playing with the colors to denote your scene. Okay, here's the frat thing where you have a lot of bright colors. They're wearing a lot of bright, clothing. Maybe they have some, cool, taco, beer, or whatever, shirts and stuff like that. But then, as you're going through, you could be shifting back to another panel, a series of panel that shows a lot of darks and negative, a lot of washed out grays, and that for the monster or whatever that ends up going through into this alley, maybe it's the classic shift to see who's through the eyes of the monster to see who's walking down the halls, so you got a lot of use of colors showing the character and associated with the character. And then maybe you introduce a shift color wise for all of a sudden the frat house, they're out to go on a liquor run, and they end up having to go through this alley. So you're leaving the bright frat house, and things start to get darker. And even though they're wearing those beer shirts or whatever, maybe your tones are more, cool, muted, where they're still doing, but overall the cover is getting darker, that it's kind of leading up to this.
Yeah.
And then you're now patching and merging these two scenes together color wise, and then all of a sudden the trap gets sprung, and then you're hit with another big vibrant, blood, or maybe it's a lot of oranges and yellows and all this stuff to kind of in your face. Here's the action is jumping up, and they're now getting attacked. And then as they go through and the scene occurs, they get towards the end of the scene where now pretty much most, if not all, of the frat characters are dead, and you kind of can bring it full circle and now start to mute the colors and go back into, maybe you still have the blood, but maybe instead of this bright red, it's starting to seep into like a dark burgundies and stuff like that, to kind of bring it back to the darkness that this alley has. So there's a lot of fun stuff that you can play around, color wise and all that stuff, to help you really emphasize what's going on these scenes.
Yeah, I think also like following up on that, and a lot of it does, like, when it comes to evoking discomfort, color can play such an important role in that. Because I mean, there are certain shades or certain combinations of shades that just kind of give you that immediate like gag reflex. Because I think of, like, speaking of someone who paints Warhammer, the stuff you do when you're painting Nurgle, right, where you get kind of like the vibrant green with the muted purple and just kind of like the mixed yellow, and it kind of gives like this look of like a pussy bruise, kind of makes it like you really go a little bit in the back of your throat. And of course, you can do certain things other where I mentioned others, like where I on the disembowelment scene, something like that, where I feel like it'd be very easy just to kind of do that all as one shade of red, where I feel like if you're not necessarily trying to do body horror, but like you have disembowelment in your comic for whatever reason, you might do it all as one shade of red to kind of let it be a washed over moment where like you show it's there and that like something brutal has occurred, but it's not the point. Whereas I feel like if you're going with body horror, not only are you going to make that more so like the center of the frame, but you're probably going to have different tones of like, a red stomach lining, pink intestines, and like maybe some purples and like the undershadows and that, just like really kind of like force the eye to kind of go all over the scene.
Yeah, if you're talking about that, you're talking about a scene where the horror has happened, and now you're kind of panning back and surveying. I mean, obviously, if your goal is to show how definitely how mutilated it is, then yeah, definitely you're kind of depending on how the penciler did it. If they're like stretched out and their guts and disembowelment is right in your face, and you're gonna want to obviously focus on that and brighten those areas up, and maybe if they're laying back and their head's back, you start to push the colors and mute the colors back away from you, in the area, so you're almost like blending the head laying back and whatever into the background. So you really want to focus on the mess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I see visuals popping in your head.
100%. Yeah. It's also, I'm just kind of thinking about like, at any point, like our employers could stumble across this podcast or.
Just remember, we are a family show.
Yeah.
Everything that is brought up here, take it with a grain of salt, and
purely for purposes, like the purposes of like furthering the arts and like and encouraging people to try new creative methods.
We have other things, other books like Tiny and Bay that are very kid friendly, and we have other things that maybe hit the other side of it. So
can I convince Roland to let me do like a combo of Bear and Dracula.
Yeah, why do I picture Five Nights at Freddy's happening with Bay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you're in the. Speaking of pitching horror stuff, that might be something else for another time. I don't know if you're in like the group conversation where I had pitched. It was when Winnie the Pooh became common public domain. I had pitched a Winnie the Pooh monster story where Winnie the Pooh essentially was like an ancient eldritch being that has haunted the streets of London by night. And when Christopher Robin was coming home from the factory late one day, as 8 and 10-year-old kids are wont to do in 1800s England, he stumbles across Pooh, who panics and attacks Christopher Robin, turns him into a vampire, and when realizing that Christopher Robin can no longer live in London safely, it comes up to Pooh to rescue Christopher Robin from his parents, who are trying to essentially burn him at the stake and take him to his vampire enclave, which is the 100-acre wood.
All right, so two things have popped in my head. The first is I just picture this Winnie the Pooh that's just tattered, and it's been through the ringer, and just like take this Winnie the Pooh bear and bury it in the dirt, set the land on fire around it, so so it's like all the external is like partially melted, burned, and all, and put some kind of really kind of deranged maybe the one eye that's wide open, pupilless eye, and it's just this thing. Yeah, that's the first thing that goes through my head. The second thing was actually something. It was I think it was like a meme or something that I saw on Facebook, and what it did is it had Winnie the Pooh, Rabbit, and them. They're all around the TV, freaked out, and on the TV is a picture that says, Christopher Robin arrested.
Right.
And it just brought me to that, thinking about that meme, when you're thinking about this kind of twisted thing. Though, correct me if I'm wrong, but is possibly Xenoscope doing something with that type of twist on on Winnie the Pooh? I believe they may be doing something similar.
I believe so. Yeah, I've not been following. It's entirely possible, because that definitely sounds like something that the editorial staff right there would want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of the thought I had, because that was also around the same time that essentially I had been pitched with the idea of writing Dracula. It's like, wait, I already have the vibe going. I can just continue it on.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see when the characters, hit public domain. I mean, that's kind of a big topic right now with a lot of the Disney characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this there can be some really interesting takes put out there for Mickey and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I think someone may have already done it. If not, it's just a fever dream of mine that I want to do it. But I believe someone's already done a adaptation of Great Gatsby, where the Emerald Light that Jack falls in love with is actually like the Call of Cthulhu. Like, Emerald Light is like him being slowly deranged by the call to go to Rahalea.
Nice.
So, yeah. Okay. See if I have any other notes you haven't caught over yet.
Sorry if I derailed.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah.
we tend to just kind of run with it and see where we
This
use
has
the
been good.
notes as guides.
Yeah, we
Very
use the
loose.
notes. We use the notes to come back to if we ever get to a moment where Peter out, pretty much. Okay. This is also going to be something that's interesting. So, understanding the influence of culture on body horror. Now, myself and David here, we live in America, and our comics are primarily going to be for American audiences. So we have like American understanding of body horrors, but different cultures around the world, and also different times, the different understandings of body horror and the different things that went into it. Actually, when we went to go see Romulus, that's something that we kind of talked about was, for the sake of not politicizing the show, but the aliens' preferred form of essentially reproducing had some was strongly influenced from some of the women's liberation movement ideologies and proponents pushed forward by the 60s and 70s. So that's a Google in your own time. That's some interesting reading there. But also the scaling at which things happen, whereas right, some of the horror that is done now, then like the amount of things that you can show would have been unthinkable 50, 60 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think of the controversy of just bathing suits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think of, I think of my grandmother's time, and my great grandmother's time in the 20s and all that. It's like, if you show midriff, that's scandalous. So, yeah, same thing with horror. It's like a lot of, you think of a lot of the, the silent movies and, and all that. A lot of that was hinted at, so we weren't actually showing a lot of the, the tearing of the flesh and all that. It's just, you hinted at it and it was enough to do it. So it's definitely something that's been around. And I think a thing that played a big part of it was, Fangoria and stuff like that, to really kind of push a lot of, creators to go a little bit farther and a little bit farther. So.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where if you are getting into creating horror comics, you kind of have to be aware of kind of where the current cultural mindset is regarding stuff, and figure out like, is this something you want to push? How do you want to push it? Kind of where do you want to sit things so you still have your commercial appeal, right? That you can still sell it and have a general audience, but where do you want to have that moment where you really push the envelope that sets you apart from the rest of the field? Are you doing sort of a player subversion on that, where you'll think of some movies or some comics or books that are more or less doing a period piece, so they acquire a lot of these same elements of storytelling of the past. I'm going to use Penny Dreadful as an example, where I think what made some of Penny Dreadful so exceptional was they have moments where it just follow almost conventions of storytelling from the period it's which is set in, and then you have a massive upset or subversion where then you do show something that's just absolutely horrific, or you show something that is more a more modern context of storytelling, and so people are kind of in the period piece mindset, but then they get shocked by the sudden showing of someone getting beheaded or something like that.
Yeah, I also think of things like, we've talked about it before, but Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and all that. You get a lot of a good use of time period and some elements that I think worked pretty well was, the fact that a lot of that is supposed to be behind locked doors. and everything for the time was meant to be, up front and proper. So even the monsters were kind of hiding in that illusion of, no, we're aristocratic, we're, yeah.
We got the cinematic aristocratic gentleman Dracula.
Then they shut the doors, and then the feast happens,
Yeah.
and their wild natures go. But then, over the course, they kind of, clean themselves up and keep that illusion of the time. So, some good things that I like that was, put in that, that's a good use of different time periods and things like that. So, and it's more to exactly your point here was, if you were telling the story at the time, then you wouldn't be going through and showing the feast, because you'd be hinting more towards it, and maybe wording descriptions of it, but they bring in that modern graphic, here's to push how bad this feast is, so that's a good example, like you were saying, about a time period, but interjecting things from more modern into it.
Yeah. And to further abstract this, like playing on all sorts of cultural influences can do a lot to either make things more impactful or make them just more enjoyable. I mean, the whole point of like Winnie the Pooh as essentially like the Canaanite vampire beast was because it plays on two different expectations, both on like this is something that's very absurd and like for the piece that is mostly considered to be like a children's cartoon or a children's book, but also because at the time it was originally created, like this type of storytelling just did not happen. So,
well, also remember that some of our beloved child-friendly stories actually came from dark origins and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, was it Cinderella's story? Her foot actually got bloodied in the trying to put the slipper back onto her stepsister's feet and her stepmom's feet actually got so bloody to the point where it ground them to a stump. And then when they tried to essentially pull her back, the birds came down and picked out her stepfamily's eyes.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, fun stuff. I think, it's kind of understanding the, also knowing, like, everyone has a notion of how something is, or was supposed to be. So if you can use your, like, elements of storytelling to play that in multiple ways, you can do a lot to, like, make moments more impactful or just stand out compared to other stories that may fall more in line with the expectations of the genre. Thinking of pop to an anime, for example, just because it's in my mind, or a manga, it's mangas or comics. But Hellsing, the reason why that got so popular is because it's Dracula with guns killing other vampires. It's like, all right, this is wild. I'm sure. But it's that you have the expectation of what Dracula is or supposed to be. You have an idea of, like, who the church is, and then you have a comic that comes on. So, like, neither things that I'm not following by either of these rules. I'm giving Dracula my guns, and he's a servant to the church. Or I guess to the state of England, but yeah.
Yeah, I also like a lot of the one of my favorite animes, which did a lot of the demon aspect of it, was Ninja Scroll.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the use of the counter between your classic samurai, and his methods versus the really twisted, corrupted demons that he's fighting through. And some of the things that they do, warning for the not exactly. It's an older anime, but not something for the kid-friendly families. So I recommend not checking that out if you have a lot of young ones. But there are some themes in there, but there was some great use of different types of demons and demon powers and things. So it was, for me, it was very enjoyable because, like I said, you're dealing with your traditional samurai that's, you know, trying to stop these and gets kind of sucked into stopping these monsters, and quite a few different variations of the demons and the powers that they have. So
Yeah, I mean, similarly to that, Berserk, and speaking of another uh, kind of, there's a lot of great body horror in Berserk and just great weird demon stuff, and like body horror not just in the sense of like someone being like torn apart immediately, but then like weird mutations of body parts and things presented in ways they're not supposed to be. And the way that they presented Guts at the start as being sort of utterly unlikable and not even an anti-hero, but for us, like the only reason why he's not a villain is because the other people in the storyline are more villainous.
he's the least of the worst.
Yeah, until you get to like, and that did such a good job of making you get like almost like it almost like it's like the idea of nagging, right? Where you insult someone to the point where they're interested, where it kind of like it insults your idea of how stories should present themselves to get you interested. Just like, normally, you have the hero's journey and the reluctant hero and all this stuff. It's like, no, this guy, there's no reluctance about him. Like, he is going to kill everyone in his path, and you're here for the ride. And it's like, why am I here? And you then eventually it's kind of fall in love with how much of a jackass this guy is until you get to the Golden Age storyline and get more of that. But it does a lot of just having you be stuck along with just terrible people and like fighting terrible monsters as things are happening. Got a question there. Does the Flash melting on the cosmic treadmill count as body horror?
No, and no, we don't only read indie.
Yes, we're actually probably the least indie focused people on the network.
We just
bring up X-Men.
This is on this topic. You don't tend to see a lot of this covered in the in the major two.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like Marvel Zombies is great. DC Undead is that, but even then, you kind of, that sounds like a really jaded way of talking about it. But even then, they're kind of watered down or almost like sell out to a point. I have not actually seen the panels of the Flash dying on the cosmic treadmill. I think it depends on how much is shown. I mean, there's definitely potential there because you literally have a person like melting. But if it gets to a point where like his skin's melting off, then yeah, absolutely. But if it's just like a cutaway, if it's just a cutaway, then it's more of like a psychological horror, right? Because that's an implied thing. But yeah, David, are you familiar with that scene?
Yes, it's been quite a while since I've seen it, but I'm not sure I would consider that as much of a body horror type thing myself.
Right. See there, yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of,
because it's like it's a shock moment. It's a shock moment. It's a sad, sad moment. But literally, from what I remember, it's not really something that's just meant to go and gore. Make you feel gore, like things, just grabbing and ripping and tearing, tentacles, or fishing, hooks and stuff like that, rending the flesh from you.
I feel like when you put that in the same universe, it's like we have a character like Atrocities who at like one point literally melted someone's face off by like vomiting acid blood on them. I guess like to me that definitely is much more, that kind of like sets the standard for like body horror when you have a scene like that happen in the same universe. Also, shout out Atrocities. Okay.
Our Red Lantern.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
we have read some other things too.
Yes.
We actually have a pretty wide range of stuff that we've followed.
Yeah.
So
Okay. There you go. So I guess we're coming into our last 20 minutes here. So I'll ask you, do you have any practical advice for creators who are looking to develop in kind of the body horror space?
my suggestion would be to know your market that you want to market it to, and also know which team you're going to team up to do it with. It's about kind of doing some research and seeing what areas you want to hit, what editorial team you want to work with, and other collaborators that share a similar vision. If you want something that's going to be, for example, if you wanted to do something that was going to be very graphic, very sexualized, stuff like that, then somebody like Tim Vigil is going to be your guy to go with. Even I know he does most of his own stuff, but Jim Balint did a lot of with his stuff. He's doing more his own stuff now, but he's doing a lot of the sexualized stuff and all that. But if you're wanting to do something that's more along the classic horror things, then maybe the Image Skybound stuff with the Universal Monsters, that may be your jam. So finding the right target audience that you want to interject your stuff with, finding the right editorial staff that'll allow you to do it, or if you just want to do your own thing, then the indie route and self-publishing is another thing. So a lot of it is kind of mapping out where you want to go, what your end result is, and see if you can find the right people to work with, the right situation to get what you want to put out. And then ultimately is it a matter of, is it something that you want to do it your way no matter what, or if you want to do it in a broader perspective. A lot of things, unless you're one of very few that can do it their way and it's really well accepted, and you can sell it to a lot of mass people. A lot of things that you tend to do on your own and exclusively on your own kind of will limit the exposure that you have, and the exposure also relates to the profits and all that. So if you're okay with if you want 100% control of it and aren't afraid that the end result is if you don't hit that landslide, that you're breaking even with that and you're just happy because your stuff's out there, then that's a factor to go with as well. So
yeah. I say from the writing perspective, make all those same considerations, but also when you're writing, don't get so caught up in the horror at the moment that you forget to write the story around it. Right. There's a post that's going around. I don't remember the guy who said the quote, but the 2 rules of science fiction horror. I'm going to use that as these are just 2 rules for every horror section. Is don't get so caught up with the spectacle that you forget the plot. And the second rule is get weird with it. So like once you actually have your plot down, that's when you start like getting weird and doing stuff. Like everyone has another thing where you start writing because you have like a scene or a visual in your mind and you want to write out that scene first, and then you write the story around that, and that's perfectly fine. But don't make your entire comic just that, because then it's just essentially then you're just giving an artist prompts to do a portfolio book. But do like once you have your scene or ideas down, create your full storyline, how it's going to play through, because the actual through plot is going to be what keeps people interested. If it's just good visuals, then they're just going to like get the big pages and put it down. But if you have a good story, that's they keep coming back. And kind of the same thing, make considerations of what you're writing, to who, and what path you want to go through, because that's going to affect how weird you can get with it. Because like we said, if you're working on Marvel Zombies, you can get away with some things. If you're doing your own self-published book with an artist that you know personally, you can get away with so much more. But then you have to deal with all things of publishing and marketing it yourself. So kind of your standard career considerations when making a book as well. Yeah, that has been all the thoughts that I've had.
Yeah. Any other questions or anything from
chat? I think Keen Sport Cal gave us a peace sign, so I think they dipped out at the end there. But yeah, thank you everyone who watched and chatted live. If you are listening later to the fact on the podcast services around the world and want to join the conversation live, like Gene Houston and Keen Sport Cal did today, head on over to youtube.com/Silverline and give us a subscribe or a follow. Also on Twitch, you can join the conversation live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those respective days. Let me grab our topic for next week. That is going to be on my phone because I've changed the way my calendars are set up.
Another thing to do is keep a watch for Silverline on Fund My Comic, and also the submissions that are through Diamond. So take a look at those previews. There's typically a Silverline book that's going and alternating through the Diamond Previews book, just to get some, maybe there's some stuff that piques your interest. So
yeah. Next week is going to be how to draw Monster Anatomy. So this is going to be continuing on with our Halloween themed monster specials. So this will probably also be asking Dave some questions about coloring Demon and all the monsters in Demon's Tales.
And hopefully Jose will be weathered the storm and he'll be back. And maybe, I'm not sure, availability for any other of the Silverline artists. Maybe they might be able to join as well.
Yeah, be a good time. Okay, well, thank you all for hanging out. We'll see you next week. But until that time,
make mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline.